Have you ever wondered why some people seem to thrive on challenges, while others, who might be just as talented, or even more so, seem to crumble at the first sign of difficulty? It's a question that echoes in the quiet moments of our own lives. We see it in the classroom, where one student gets a bad grade and resolves to study twice as hard, while another, they're equal in every measurable way, decides they're simply bad at math and gives up. We see it in the office, where one colleague takes constructive criticism as a roadmap for improvement, and another hears it as a devastating personal judgment, a verdict on their worth. We even see it in ourselves, in those moments where the fear of not being good enough stops us from even trying something new, from picking up that guitar, from applying for that promotion, from speaking up in a meeting. Why is it that the very same setback can be a springboard for one person and a brick wall for another? This isn't a trivial question. It lies at the very heart of human potential, of what we can achieve and who we can become. For decades, we've been told stories about innate talent, about being a natural, about some people just being born with it. But what if that story, the one we build our entire educational system and so much of our self-worth around, is fundamentally wrong? What if the difference doesn't lie in our abilities, but in our beliefs about our abilities? This was the puzzle that captivated a young psychologist named Carol Dweck. She wasn't just curious about this phenomenon, she became obsessed. She saw this divergence in human response not as a personality quirk, but as a foundational crack in our understanding of success and failure. Her life's work became a quest to understand this deep, invisible force that shapes our relationship with everything we do. This is a story of that quest, a journey that began with a simple observation of children and ended with a discovery so profound it has the power to reshape the way you see your own life, your own intelligence, and your own capacity for growth. Carol Dweck's journey didn't begin with grand theory. It began in a room with a group of children and a series of puzzles. As a young researcher, she was fascinated by how people cope with failure. So she designed a study. She would bring children one by one into a room and give them a series of puzzles to solve. The first few were designed to be fairly easy, building their confidence. But then she would introduce puzzles that were intentionally too difficult for their age level. They were designed to produce struggle, to create a moment of failure. What she was interested in wasn't whether they could solve them. She knew they couldn't, but how they would react to the experience of not being able to. What she observed next would define the course of her entire career. The children's reactions weren't just a little different. They were polar opposites, as if they were operating from two completely different realities. One group of children, when faced with a difficult puzzle, reacted with what you might expect. Frustration, a sigh, maybe a comment about it being too hard, but they saw the failure as a temporary state, an attribute of the puzzle itself. However, it was the other group that truly shocked her. When these children failed, they didn't just get frustrated. They took it as a personal indictment. They saw the struggle not as a part of learning, but as a sign of their own stupidity. They would say things like, "I guess I'm not very smart." Some would become so dejected they refused to even try another puzzle, even the easier ones they had solved just moments before. The failure had contaminated their entire sense of self. It was a swift and brutal collapse. Before this discovery, the prevailing wisdom in psychology was that a person's intelligence was a fixed quantity, something you could measure with an IQ test. And that was that. Your score was your destiny. This belief permeated society, creating a world obsessed with proving its own innate giftedness. But Dweck's observations didn't fit this model. If intelligence was the only thing that mattered, why were some of the brightest children in her studies the most fragile in the face of challenge? Why did they fall apart so quickly, while others, with no more apparent ability, seemed to relish the struggle? There was a missing piece to the puzzle of human achievement, a variable that no one was talking about. This world, before Dweck's insight, was a world full of wasted potential. It was a world where a brilliant young artist gives up after one negative critique, where a promising scientist abandons a line of inquiry after a single failed experiment, where countless people live their lives inside a carefully constructed comfort zone, terrified to try anything where they might not be immediately perfect. The stakes were immense. This invisible force was silently dictating destinies, sorting people not by their actual abilities, but by their response to the inevitable challenges of life. Dweck knew she had stumbled upon something fundamental, a psychological schism that ran deeper than talent or intelligence. The question was no longer just if people reacted differently, but why. What was the source code driving these two radically different responses to the exact same event? Her quest had found its true beginning. The first major breakthrough came when Dweck and her team began to listen more closely not just to what the children did, but to what they believed. They started asking them questions about their fundamental assumptions about intelligence itself. And that's when the pattern emerged, clear as day. The children who collapsed in the face of failure, the ones who saw a difficult puzzle as a verdict on their very being, all shared a common, powerful, and invisible belief. They believed that their intelligence was a fixed trait. It was something you were born with, a finite amount you carried through life. You were either smart or you weren't. Dweck called this the fixed mindset. When you operate from this mindset, the entire world transforms into a series of tests, a constant performance where your core intelligence is on the line. Every task, every exam, every project is not an opportunity to learn. It's a trial to determine if you have it. This reframes the entire meaning of effort and failure. For someone in a fixed mindset, effort is a bad thing. If you were truly smart, a natural, you wouldn't need to try so hard. The need for effort is seen as evidence of a deficiency in your innate ability. Think of the brilliant student who prides themselves on never studying but still getting A's. The moment they encounter a subject that requires real, sustained effort, their entire identity is threatened. To try hard and still struggle is, in their worldview, to prove that you were never that smart to begin with. The ego can't handle it. So it's safer to not try at all, to label the subject as boring or stupid, and preserve the illusion of effortless genius. Failure, in this worldview, is nothing short of catastrophic. It is not an event, it is an identity. If you fail, it means you are a failure. It's a permanent label, a scar on your record. This explains why the children in her study shut down so completely. The difficult puzzle wasn't just a puzzle, it was a judge, and it had delivered its final, damning verdict. This insight explains so many perplexing human behaviors we see in the world. Dweck points to the story of the legendary tennis player John McEnroe. He was a man of breathtaking natural talent, but he was famously unable to cope with failure. A single bad call or a missed shot wasn't just a point lost. It was a personal affront, an injustice that would send him into a rage. He couldn't separate the event from himself. He avoided practice, believing that effort was for the less talented, and he never truly evolved his game, allowing him to be surpassed by rivals like Ivan Lendl and Jimmy Connors, men who were famous for their relentless work ethic. The fixed mindset creates a deep-seated fear of challenge because a challenge carries the risk of failure, and failure is a judgment on your fundamental worth. This is a mindset that drove the culture at Enron, a company that famously hired only from the most elite schools, creating a culture of talent where everyone had to project an aura of supreme, effortless intelligence. Admitting a mistake or asking for help was a sign of weakness, a career-ending move. This toxic environment of proving rather than improving led them to hide their massive failures until the entire corporation imploded. The fixed mindset created a world where you are constantly trying to protect and validate a static image of yourself, rather than dedicating your energy to actually growing. It connects directly back to that universal problem we started with. It is the reason why talent is not enough, and why so many of us feel a paralyzing fear of stepping outside our comfort zone. It's an internal monologue of judgment that whispers, "What if I'm not good enough? What if they find out I'm fraud?" This was a monumental discovery, explaining the psychology of stagnation and fragility. But it was only half the story. Uncovering the fixed mindset was a revelation, but it also presented a new, even more profound puzzle. What about the other children? The ones who, when faced with an impossible puzzle, didn't crumble but instead seemed to lean in, who got a spark in their eyes and said things like, "I love a challenge," or "I was hoping this would be informative." What was their secret? If one group was operating under the belief that intelligence was fixed, what was the alternative? Dweck and her team went back to this group, and what they found was a second, equally powerful, and diametrically opposed belief system. These children didn't believe intelligence was a static trait you were given. They believed intelligence was something that could be developed. They understood, intuitively, that the brain was like a muscle, that through effort, strategy, and confronting challenges, you could actually become smarter. Dweck named this the growth mindset. Suddenly, the entire landscape of meaning shifted. If you believe your abilities can be cultivated, then the world is no longer a series of tests to prove your worth. Instead, it becomes a world of opportunities to learn and grow. Effort, in this new framework, is not a sign of weakness. It is the very engine of growth. It's the path that takes you from where you are to where you want to be. Effort is what activates your potential. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. The student who studies for hours isn't admitting they're dumb. They're actively building their intelligence. The athlete who stays after practice to run drills isn't compensating for a lack of talent. They're forging it. And most profoundly, failure is completely redefined in the growth mindset. Failure is not a verdict. It's not a permanent label. It's simply information. It's feedback. A failed test tells you what you don't know yet. A rejected proposal shows you what you need to strengthen. A loss in a game reveals the weaknesses you need to work on. Failure is not a judgment on you. It is a signpost pointing the way toward what you need to do next. This insight explained the resilience of those other children. They weren't afraid of the difficult puzzle because it held no power to define them. It was just a problem to be worked on, a chance to get smarter by grappling with it. This deeper truth illuminates the stories of some of the world's most successful people. Michael Jordan, widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time, famously had a fixed mindset about his talent early on. But the story of him being cut from his high school varsity team became his crucible. Instead of deciding he wasn't good enough, he used the failure as fuel. He spent his mornings before school practicing, honing his skills with a relentless work ethic. He didn't see the setback as a verdict, but as a starting point. His entire career was a testament to the growth mindset, constantly adding new skills to his game long after he was considered the best. This principle also led Dweck to conduct one of her most famous studies. She and her researchers took a group of 7th graders and praised them in 2 different ways. After a test, half the students were praised for their intelligence. Wow, you must be really smart at this. The other half were praised for their effort. Wow, you must have worked really hard at this. Then, they were all given the choice of a new task, an easy one they could be sure to do well on, or a more difficult one that they were told they would learn a lot from. The results were staggering. The overwhelming majority of the students praised for their intelligence chose the easy task. They didn't want to risk their smart label. But 90% of the students praised for their effort chose a harder, more educational task. They were living in the growth mindset, where challenge was welcome. Even more, when they were later given a difficult test, the smart kid performance plummeted, while the effort kid scores actually improved. They saw the struggle as part of the process. This showed that mindset wasn't just a belief. It was a belief that could be influenced from the outside, a belief that had a direct and immediate impact on performance and resilience. The story was no longer just about a hidden force. It was about a force that could potentially be changed. For years, the research focused on these 2 distinct mindsets, often categorizing people as being in one camp or the other. It was a powerful dichotomy, a useful way of understanding 2 very different ways of navigating the world. But as Dweck's work deepened, she arrived at a grander, more unifying synthesis, the ultimate aha moment of her entire career. The most profound truth wasn't that there are 2 types of people in the world, fixed mindset people and growth mindset people. That, in itself, would be a fixed mindset way of looking at it. Just another set of labels to sort people into permanent boxes. The true revelation was that these aren't static personality traits at all. They are simply beliefs. And we all possess both. The fixed and growth mindsets are not who we are. They are mindsets that we inhabit at different times. We are all a mixture of both. You might have a growth mindset about your athletic ability, believing you can improve with practice, but a deeply fixed mindset about your creative talents, believing you just can't draw. You might have a growth mindset at work, but the moment you receive criticism from your partner, a powerful fixed mindset trigger fires, and you become defensive and feel judged. This was a grand synthesis. The real work isn't about identifying which category you belong to. The real work is in recognizing that we all have a fixed mindset persona living inside of us. It's that voice of fear, the voice of the ego, the one that whispers, "Are you sure you can do this? What if you fail?" They'll all laugh at you. Don't risk it. This voice is a defense mechanism. It's trying to protect us from the pain of failure, from the shame of not being good enough. But in its effort to protect us, it traps us. It builds a cage of comfort and keeps us from the very challenges that would lead to our growth. The ultimate power, the true aha moment, lies in the realization that we have a choice. We can learn to hear that fixed mindset voice, to recognize it not as an undeniable truth, but as one perspective, and we can learn to answer it. We can cultivate a growth mindset voice that says, "Yes, this is hard. Yes, I might fail, but I will learn from it. My worth is not on the line here. Let's try." This changes everything. It moves the conversation from one of diagnosis to one of practice. The goal isn't to banish the fixed mindset forever. That's probably impossible. The goal is to develop a relationship with it, to understand its triggers, and to consciously choose the growth path again and again. The unifying idea is that our reality is not shaped by our talent, but by the meaning we assign to effort, challenge, and failure. And that meaning is entirely within our control. This is the ultimate liberation. It means that your past failures do not define your future. It means that your current abilities are not a ceiling on what you can become. The story of your potential is not yet written, and you are the one holding the pen. So, we journeyed through this incredible discovery, from a simple puzzle in a classroom to a profound understanding of the hidden beliefs that shape our lives. We've seen how the fixed mindset creates a world of judgment and fear, and how the growth mindset opens up a world of learning and resilience. But understanding this is only the first step. The real question is, what do we do with this knowledge? The power of Carol Dweck's work lies not just in its diagnosis, but in its blueprint for change. It offers a practical path for cultivating a growth mindset in our own lives. Starting today, the first step is to simply learn to hear your fixed mindset voice. Pay attention to those moments when you feel defensive about criticism, when you shy away from a challenge, or when you feel envious of someone else's success. What is that voice inside you saying? Usually it's a voice of judgment. You're a failure. You'll never be as good as them. If you have to try this hard, you're obviously not cut out for it. Just notice it without judgment. The second step is to recognize that you have a choice. You don't have to believe that voice. It's a perspective, not the absolute truth. The third and most crucial step is to talk back to it with a growth mindset voice. When the fixed mindset says, "You failed," you can consciously reply, "This strategy didn't work. What can I try next? What can I learn from this?" When it says, "You can't do it," you can answer with the most powerful two-letter word in this entire philosophy. "I can't do it yet." And finally, the fourth step is to take growth-oriented action. Choose the hard task. Listen to the criticism and look for the lesson. Persist in the face of setbacks. This isn't a quick fix or a magic pill. It is a lifelong practice. It's a commitment to a different way of living, one based on curiosity instead of fear, on progress instead of perfection. And it's a journey you don't have to take alone. The very act of watching this, of engaging with these ideas, is a step on that path. If this story resonated with you, if you feel that spark of possibility, then I invite you to make a commitment to that journey. Subscribing to this channel is more than just clicking a button. It's a declaration. It's a way of saying you want to be part of a community dedicated to exploring these powerful ideas, to challenging our own limits, and to supporting each other in the messy, beautiful, and essential process of growth. Because our potential is not something to be discovered, but something to be developed one challenge at a time.